Hello again, everyone. Edwin Learnard back once again. In this YouTube astrological segment, I will be talking about the 7th house in astrology. Now, first off, I'm going to talk about what the 7th house rules. Now, the 7th house in astrology is associated with a significant other, a marriage partner, relationships. It could be your important, significant friendships, legalities, legal matters, lawsuits, open adversaries, a grandmother, also negotiation, compromise, arbitration, and just what you're doing as far as others go, I would say in general as well. Now, the thing about this, first thing you look at when you look at the 7th house in astrology, you look at the sign that is on the cusp of it. Now, I'll use my chart as an example. Now, I have Scorpio on my 7th house cusp. Now, that could manifest, of course, in a number of ways. I could attract very vengeful, powerful, open adversaries. The person I may actually marry at some point, eventually, if that ever does happen, may be a Scorpio sun, moon, or ascendant person, or may simply embody those characteristics. It could also be, it could reflect a grandmother. Interestingly enough, the 7th house in astrology reflects, it's the less dominant parent's mother, and which the less dominant parent, of course, is often the mother. My mother's mother had a Scorpio ascendant. Oddly enough, it's so eerie and uncanny how accurate astrology can be, and it just boggles the mind that there's so many cynics and skeptics of it. But anyway, another thing, and also too, it could be, having a Scorpio on the 7th house cusp. Another way that could manifest and pan out is that if I'm involved in any negotiations, they may often be very intense, to say the least. And any issue, competition. Because of I'm not involved in any extreme sports. Last time I checked, but many competition I may be in can be ones that have a lot of emotional intensity in it, to say the absolute least. So anyway, now another thing about this, it's important to look and see if the house inhabits any planets in it, because of course that will flavor the house. Now, in my case, I have Neptune and Scorpio in the 7th house cusp. This could, again, this is something that can manifest in a multitude of ways. It could be, it could reflect the dissolving and dissipation of relationships. I might attract people that are involved in drugs into my life, or people that have some kind of weakness, or whether it's some debilitation or some limitation, like some being in a impoverished situation. People that might be involved, again, it might be in alcohol or drugs. It might be you could say sex addicts, because you're talking about, Neptune can be about addictions, and of course Scorpio can be about sex, but that's very extreme. The example that I'm saying could also be the fact that it's Neptune, and it could be also too that I may connect with a number of people that are the number of Pisces people in my life. It could be Pisces sun, moon, or ascendant people, or simply people that embody those characteristics, such as being very self-sacrificing, altruistic, compassionate, intuitive, even mediumistic. It could also be Neptune in the 7th house can have difficulty in deciphering the character composition of others too, which unfortunately I have to admit I do have that problem at times. So anyway, well, it's also important to look for aspects that are made to the 7th house cusp, and planets that are in it, if you have any in it. Now, in my case, it's interestingly enough, I have Saturn and Taurus in the 12th house, making an opposition to my, at least a long opposition to my Neptune and Scorpio in the 7th, but also what it does, it makes the opposition to my 7th house cusp. Now, I think the opposition, the fact that it makes that opposition to my seventh house cusp is interesting because when I was engaged when I was like 19 years old, my grandparents were very adversarial as far towards my uh, toward the person that I was going to be engaged with, and the Saturn can reflect older people in one's life. Now, they were secretly against it. Interestingly enough, Saturn is in my 12th house of the hidden. It makes an opposition to my 7th house cusp of relationships and significant others, and it tells me it's interesting. Maybe they thought that the person, the fact that I have Scorpio on my seventh house cusp, maybe they thought the person was somewhat, they were manipulative. The person was manipulative in some way, and they didn't think that maybe there was some, hidden agenda that was going on with this person being involved in with me. So. The thing is, those are some ways that can manifest and pan out. And another thing, too, is that I have to be careful with Saturn making that opposition to my Neptune. That could be, in some cases, not seeing reality for what it is. And having Neptune, again, in that 7th house is about, people having difficulty in deciphering the character composition of others, but it could be about deception in relationships, and the fact that Saturn makes the opposition to it. It might give added difficulty in seeing what is actually real in those people, those 7th house people, whether they're open adversaries, maybe imagined at times, or maybe it was situations with my grandmother when she was alive, and just 7th house matters in general. Anyway, well, next thing to look at, it's important to look and see what house or houses, depending if there is one or two rulers of the sign on that house, what house does the ruler of the 7th house fall in? In my case, it's houses, because having Scorpio on the cusp of the 7th house, of course, gives it two rulers, Mars and Pluto. Now, when you're talking about house rulers in astrology, what it is that it's basically, you could say, forms a relationship. It really amalgamates the energy of the houses, but what it is the house where the ruler is coming from. Base is what it is. That energy is being injected. You're bringing that energy into the house that ruler falls in. So in my case, the fact that I have, for the first example, I have Scorpio on the 7th house cusp. Mars, one of the rulers, falls in my 3rd house. So basically, one way that can manifest and pan out, it could be where I might have trouble with my relationships, because they might be, the 3rd house may unequivocally be the most mercurial house of the zodiac, because it does correspond with the zodiac sign Gemini. Hold on a moment, people. Sorry about that, but anyway, and really, it could be too that you're also another way that may manifest and pan out. It could be that I'm bringing the need. You're talking about the seventh house is the house of open adversaries, and it just makes me think that maybe sometimes, I be bringing them into my communications or talking about them at times. It could also, there's a lot of ways that this could play out, of course. And if I actually had a significant other, it might also indicate that I'm bringing her on my short journeys a lot, in my little short travels. But anyway, another thing too is that, and also another ruler is Pluto, and that falls in my 5th house. So it could be too that I'm bringing my important friendships into matters that are enjoyable to me, like sports, for example. Even though I can't play sports anymore, I can actually, I'm still an avid fan of sports, and also maybe bringing the need I mean, the seventh house is also about negotiation and compromise, and bringing that into matters. If I ever have any children or have or any romantic interest, that's where I might bring that energy in, to inject that energy. Because again, when you're talking about house rulers, you're talking about the energy from, you could say, house A, where the planet is coming from. It's basically what you're doing is you're bringing that energy into the house that ruler falls in. So anyway, now another thing too is that it's also important to look at transits to the seventh house, because they could be very significant, as they could signify spontaneous, sometimes unanticipated events in one's life. I mean, say for example, transit Uranus hits one's seventh house. That could either be a very unanticipated marriage, because Uranus is very unpredictable, or you might marry a foreigner if you're unattached at the time, or somebody that might embody some kind of Uranian type traits or characteristics, a person that might be very non-conforming or unorthodox or rebellious or an innovator. Could also be I mean, for like in my case, for example, I mean, say like I have Neptune in the seventh house. Now, if I have the transit South Node hitting Neptune in my seventh house, remember, South Node energy could be about what we're going away from. It could be about going away from really maybe the dissolving of relationships, or ones that are very deceptive or duplicitous, and Neptune being in Scorpio, manipulative perhaps as well. Ones that could be rather addictive that I don't necessarily need. So, and last thing I wanted to really, and also another, I mean, example, and let's say talk about as far as progressions go. Now, aspects and transits, aspects and house placements that are involved with the seventh house in a progressed chart can be important as well, but they may be more protracted, and in most cases they'll be more protracted and prolonged in contrast to transits. Now, let's say, for example, in a progressed chart, somebody has Uranus in opposition to the seventh house cusp. Now, that could be something where you might be desiring more freedom from a partner, significant other, but it might be harder to get it because it's opposing it and it's out of reach. It might be difficult. You might have difficulty getting your freedom and independence, and it could even be through maybe freeing yourself from a legal situation as well, or some lawsuit, or maybe even open adversaries trying to have freedom and independence, so to speak, from them, extricating yourself from them because the freedom is opposing it. It's Uranus being freedom is out of reach. So, or even Uranus type people, innovators, people that are involved with computers, electronics, those people that you might be trying to get in contact with might be out of reach as well at that point in time. So those are some ways that this can manifest upon it. But anyway, people, that'll conclude this YouTube astrological segment. Until next time, people, Edwin Learnard saying, stay well.